Hello, friends. We are beginning now with Laws of the Soul webinar commentary number 23 in Esoteric Psychology 2, and we're on page 179, and we are on the law of group progress. We've been working in this law for a little while, and we're in the section called the link of the world groups. Today, the new groups are slowly coming into being and being governed by these soul laws. So, that's what's so important. The new groups are characterized by the ability to express or to function through these soul laws. They will therefore strike a different note and produce groups which are welded together by a united aspiration and objective, not simply by a common desire, but by something that reaches into the higher worlds for the kinds of consciousness that can be found there. Yet, they will be constituted of free souls. Well, elsewhere, DK says there's no such thing as a truly free soul. Oftentimes when people use that term, they mean they want to be individualistic, a free individual, free from the responsibility of group work which the soul imposes. But here he means something different. He means those that are liberated into their own soul nature, individuals who are liberated into their soul nature. They will be constituted of free souls, individual and developed, who recognize no authority but of their own souls, and submerge their interests to the sole purpose of the group as a whole. Their sense of identity is other than that of the individual, simply an individual. Just as the achievement of the individual has down the ages served to raise the race, we might say the achievement of the individual, and we understand emerging under the sign Leo, down the ages has served to raise the race, so a paralleling achievement in group formation will tend to raise humanity still more rapidly, and obviously, in the opposite sign, this will emerge under Aquarius. Hence, this law is called elevation, that of elevation. And that's important. Why should this be called elevation? Well, it does involve the mountain, it does involve the goat, probably eventually the initiated group, the group as the unicorn. But let's just say group progress raises humanity. So this law of group progress is called the law of elevation. Whoops. Maybe not that one. Maybe that? No. Law of elevation. How about that? No, we don't get it. Law of elevation. The computer cannot yet read my mind. I have to put the proper abbreviations. Law of elevation. We'll do it that way. All right. So that's the real reason behind the name of the law, because as there are achievements in this new type of group, these achievements will, in fact, raise humanity, elevate humanity, right? Let's just say these groups will bring about the elevation of humanity. And let's bring that back a little bit for future reading. Okay. Right. The time has now come when this method of raising the race can be tried. I suppose we might say that it has been tried to an extent with advanced individuals. What other way was there to attempt this? Because the truly advanced group that was soul responsive as a group had not yet really emerged. Those who have entered upon the path of probation have attempted, these are Masonic kind of statements, have attempted to raise humanity and have failed. Their vision and power, not sufficient. Those who have passed upon the path of discipleship have also tried and failed. Those who have themselves mastered circumstance and the illusion of death and have consequently been raised unto life can now attempt the task in united formation. Well, here we seem to be really talking about the hierarchy, the spiritual hierarchy. They have overcome the illusion of death. They have mastered circumstance. They've been raised unto life in the monadic energy and monadic awareness, and can now attempt the task in united formation. So the spiritual hierarchy, externalizing, will attempt the raising of humanity with the help of the new group of world servers, and they will succeed. It's a 1, 2, 3, and these will be the initiates of the world, aided by, I would say, with the help of the initiates of the world and the new group of world servers, and they will succeed. And this is what the great program upon our planet is about at this time, the coming forward of those who in true group formation, having mastered the lower worlds, risen out of the lower worlds, forgone the need for reincarnation, they will succeed. The word has gone forth with the request for this united activity and the urge to bend every effort to raise the dead body of humanity. Well, those who are Masons will recognize all of these words. So this is really a Masonic raising. Entered, passed, and raised, as DK has sometimes referred to the process that works in the Blue Lodge of Masonry and is a reflection of the far greater Blue Lodge on Sirius, the Great White Lodge on Sirius, which is sometimes called the Blue Lodge. And, well, sometimes Sirius is called Blue Star, as far as that goes, and being, having a powerful, I think, final monadic ray of the second deserves to be called that. And therefore, I think would be very similar to our own solar logos, who I believe has a final monadic ray, being the second. A great and possible achievement of the Lodge of Masters, see, there's the word lodge, implying or suggesting the Masonic analogy, is now imminent, and all aspirants and all disciples can be swung into synthetic recognition of power and opportunity. So great is the opportunity before us at this time. Okay. It is for this end that the teaching of the new group of world servers was given out broadcast, the teaching anent the new group of world servers, so that those who are ready can be swung into synthetic recognition. This is the first attempt to form a new group which would work as a group and attempt a world task, a subjective spiritual group. They can act as an intermediate group, and there's their fourth ray, right? Their fourth ray is showing between the world of men and the hierarchy, and for this reason they are the ajna center. Consider the ajna center of Sanat Kumara. Hierarchy, the heart center. To humanity, well, it depends. Sometimes humanity is called the ajna center. Sometimes it's called the throat center. But they can act as an intermediate group between the world of men and the hierarchy. They stand between what is occultly called the dead master and the living master. Well, yes, so Masonic, indeed. Anybody who's been through the process will recognize this and the extreme value of Masonry in this respect. I'm remembering back 40 years ago when I entered the Masonic Lodge, and I had the Alice Bailey books in my hand, and I was looking up all the Masonic references. Well, I was able to interpret much of what went on there in terms of what Master D.K. had said, but you can imagine that the Masons of the time in the conventional Masonic Lodge were not aware in any way of these possibilities. I tried to teach some and discovered there was some interest, but limited ability to assimilate. Well, I think that's changing now with the reformation of Masonry being undertaken by the Ancient Universal Mysteries under the direction of Keith Bailey, who is the chief principal officer of that institution and doing an amazing job bringing about the reformation of Masonry as was promised early in this century. They stand between what is occultly called the dead master and the living masters. Okay. Who come to raise the dead. Masons will understand what is here described. The true esotericist will also see the same truth from another angle, and if you happen to be an esotericist who's also a Mason, there's a double impression. For an esotericist who is also a Mason, there are two modes of comprehension. Well, it's all about livingness, isn't it? We've been dead a long time, and now we have a chance to rise out of the dense physical vehicle of the planetary and solar logos. First the planetary logos into our soul nature, and then out of the dense physical vehicle of the solar logos into our Buddhic, into our triadal nature, which is truly the place of livingness. I would like here to give you some thoughts anent the new groups which come into functioning activity under the law of group progress. And of course we can find these also in Discipleship in the New Age. That's one of the very important sections where he talks about the 10 seed groups in which we will find our place as we begin to serve in alliance with the hierarchy. It must be constantly remembered as one considers these coming new groups that they are primarily an experiment in group activity. Notice always the word experiment with its Uranian connotations, non-emotional connotations. It's seeing what works. And it's connected to Aquarius, the number 11, to the initiate, and to the hierarchy. So in many ways, Uranus is a very strong planet for hierarchy. If you think about the initiation of resurrection, which is the 7th, it is ruled by, in a way, it's ruled by the second ray, but also it's ruled by Aries, with its hierarchical ruler, Uranus, which is conveying both the first, I'll say 7th first, and ultimately the first ray, the home of electric fire, raising us into the sea of fire, eventually, and that's almost a post-monadic state, at least in terms of the conventional vehicle of the monad. What are the monadic vehicles beyond that on the monadic plane? Well, nothing's been given, but we know that the whole universe is a vehicle. So these new groups are primarily an experiment in group activity and are not formed for the purpose of perfecting the individual members of a group. The group itself must become, as it were, the group individual to be perfected. So the group itself becomes the group individual to be perfected. This is a fundamental and essential statement if the objectives are rightly to be understood. And, DK began by saying, well, as individuals you don't matter so much to me per se, but as a group you matter very much. So he's really talking about the true nature of each one of his disciples, their soul nature. And as a group of souls, they matter to him very, very much, and he spent an uncharacteristic amount of time cultivating them, and it's not lost labor, I'm sure, because many will be back, they will be back, and they will know their previous experience, and they will succeed because earlier they did not quite succeed. In these groups, the members supplement and fortify each other, and in the aggregate of their qualities and capacities, they should eventually provide groups capable of useful spiritual expression and through which spiritual energy can flow unimpeded for the helping of humanity. Everyone, the conventional saying these days, everybody has each other's back, so to speak. They cover each other, and they make up for the insufficiencies of their fellow group members, and they can help neutralize some of the difficult qualities which may emerge, and in the whole, and this is the word, of course, eventually, it's a 250-year process, I understand. So a process which was begun in the 1930s, and so by 2180, will that be 1930, 2030, 2130, 2180? Well, 2180 or 2200, these groups will probably emerge in their fuller strength and effectiveness, and really be able to convey the spiritual expression which heretofore was not so possible, because they never entirely integrated under the intention of Master DK. But maybe in other ashrams that is working out to a degree. He says that the experiments up to this time have not been especially successful. But okay, you have to try and then try again until you make it. The work to be done is very much upon mental levels. The spheres of daily service of the individual members of the new groups remain as their destiny and inner urge indicates upon the physical plane. So we don't determine what that, for each other, what our service will be. That is, let's just say, a self-determined direction in service. But to the differing fields of individual effort, there will be added, and this is a point of importance, a group activity, which will be a joint and united service. So there is an outer individual service and let's call it a joint and united service. I think that's really a good way of looking at it, and that will attract or compel or demand the attention of each individual in the group, and they will submit themselves to this joint and united service. Each person in such groups has to learn to work in a close and spiritual cooperation with all the others, mind to mind, soul to soul. And this takes time. given the present point of evolutionary development of the world, aspirants. So we work with each other, mind to mind and soul to soul. Each has to pour forth love on all, and this is not easy, but it really is required. Each has to pour forth love on all, and this certainly means seeing beyond the obvious foibles to the soul nature, which is always good, even though not necessarily filled out to completeness, having certain lacks, certain insufficiencies, but always good in terms of what has been accumulated, unless, of course, one has gone into a state of extreme corruption where the personality as a separative whole is sort of vampirizing that which has been accumulated within the knowledge petals. Now, those are special cases, not the normal cases at all. Each has to pour forth love on all, and this is not easy. Each has to learn to subordinate his own personality ideas and his personal growth to the group requirements, and that's not easy either. For at present, some will have to hasten their progress in certain directions, and some must slow it down as a service for others if they're going to remain associated with those others. If they simply forge ahead, shouldering a staff without a crook to hold, sort of the idea of the Pratyeka Buddha, as that term is sometimes interpreted, just forging on ahead in kind of a first ray manner without the cohesiveness of the second ray, well, they'll just leave the group behind and will not be involved really in group work at all. So each has to learn, it's not immediate, is it, to subordinate his own personality ideas and his personal growth to the group requirements, which are determined by the group, but also set forth as a request by the master, if he's in close touch with such a group, set forth as a request, help me in this, by the master. As DK said, well, you don't need to be looking all over the map for something to do or energize some bright idea that has been suggested by one of the group members. I've laid out what I want done, so help me in my work. And at the present, some will have to hasten their progress in certain directions, so this will mean pressure, because certain insufficiencies will show up, and for the sake of the group, one must cultivate the sufficiency instead of just letting the situation remain as it is. And some will have to stay with the group, and that's a sacrifice too. I mean, think of Sanat Kumara as the planetary logos staying with the planet. Think of Sanat Kumara staying with the planet and its many aspirants of all kinds. So this process will take place automatically as the group identity and integration becomes the dominant thought, not just the welfare of the individual forging ahead. No, the group identity and integration becomes the dominant thought in the group consciousness, and the desire for personal growth and spiritual satisfaction is relegated to a secondary place. Well, that's hard for some. Maybe it's hard for us all at a certain point until we get to the point where we really understand the need for it. Certainly it was what DK wanted from his assembled students and chelas and disciples. It may be hard for them to grasp because the sense of being the individual was so strong. Not necessarily individualism, in the worst sense, but having one's own thoughts, directions, and ways, and thinking they're all quite good, and that maybe that others should adjust to those. So this contemplated group unity, the masters contemplated as desirable, will have its roots in group meditation. Yes, And without that, or in the contemplative life in which the soul knows itself to be one with all souls, that's so important. Because unless the group meditates together, there will be nothing interior to hold it together. So the root is in group meditation or in the contemplative life. What is the contemplative life? Well, he's giving us a good example of it. The soul, let's just see, the individual identifying, ID F Y, oh well, identifying, yeah, there it is. The individual identifying as the soul knows himself to be one with all souls. So we cannot identify as an individual. We cannot be the personality meditating. We have to find that place of identification where we know ourselves to be more this being with higher mental consciousness than we identify ourselves as being the usual lower mind, emotions, and body. It's a change of identity, and when that change of identity has occurred, we recognize that others are the same as we are, and that there is a oneness between all such. This is key. So this in its turn will work out in some form of group activity which will constitute the distinguishing contribution of any particular group to the raising of the human race esoterically. And again, you know, the theme of elevation comes in. Some form of group activity. So what do we have so far? We have meditation, the contemplative life, the realization of each soul of its oneness with all souls, and a group activity growing out of this realization. And this group activity is for the raising of the human race esoterically. Okay. So this in its turn, the contemplative life, the oneness with all souls, will work out in some form of group activity which will constitute the distinguishing contribution of any particular group, according to its ray, I suppose, in its stage of evolution, to the raising of the human race esoterically, in terms of its inner consciousness, raising the consciousness of the human race. And also, of course, the human race is being raised in terms of its external welfare, but this is often by those who are not working esoterically per se, but have caught, as DK says, the understanding of the law of service, and are working within those spheres that they can understand. But for disciples and aspirants such as ourselves, we have to work upon the esoteric raising of the human race. Within the group life, the individual will not be dealt with as such, and much is there, you know. It can be the individual in the light of the soul, of course, by those who seek to train, teach, and weld the group into an instrument of service. It's the individual as an expression of the soul, as an expression of the soul, not the individual in his own right, simply as a personality. Each person will be regarded as a transmitter of a certain type of energy, which is predominant energy in any ray type, either egoic or personality rays. So we are energy units, really, and that's how we have to be considered. We are energy units, and thus we have to be considered. Each can, in time, learn to transmit the quality of a soul ray. This is what we sometimes call, in the universe, with 7 rays, the ray group. Okay, wait a second. So, the ray of contribution, and well, the ray of cultivation, maybe the soul ray is both in a way. We're cultivating that, but we're contributing that as well. Stimulating his brothers to greater courage, clearer vision, courage of the first ray, vision of the second, finer purity of motive, second ray, deeper love, second ray, and yet avoid the danger of vitalizing his personality characteristics. So then we get into those 3 injunctions. Enter thy brother's heart, and enter thy brother's mind, and then blend with thy brother's soul. And those are in the treatise on white magic, and thus we can avoid the danger of vitalizing his personality characteristics. Each can in time learn to transmit the quality of his soul ray to the group. And of course, when you have groups in which but one color blends them and their unity appears, the soul ray is pretty much held in common, though it may be a different aspect of the soul ray. The soul sub 3, sub 2, sub 1, and so forth, and there are actually sub 7s, 7, 6, 5, 4, and so forth. This is the major difficulty. To do this effectively and correctly, we must learn to think of each other as souls and not as human beings, and that's quite a statement. So often we do think of each other as human beings. Of course, to be a true human being is often in a way to be a soul. I mean, a real human being. When we say, that's a real human being, we mean, well, the soul qualities are really coming through this individual. But we know what the Tibetan means here, and we have to sometimes work hard to think of each other as energy units whose real focus is on the higher mental plane. So that's the question. Can we think of each other as energy units whose real focus is on the higher mental plane? Or will we be bewildered by the obvious appearance? Well, in the beginning, of course, the obvious is what captures our attention. Almost can't help that, but we have to learn to look through the obvious. And that, I think, takes some practice in attunement and living in a point of tension where the obvious is rather negated in the presence of that which has been found through that point of tension. So we're elevating, these groups which are rising are elevating humanity itself. Therefore, as a preliminary statement, we have the following objectives in the group work of the New Age. And they make their tentative beginnings at this time. So he is writing in the 1930s, mostly. Some writing in this book, it's been collected by an editor, and sometimes things are put together in the books that are not written in sequence per se. But so there are some writings from the 1940s in this book, but a lot of it was written in the 30s, before the astrology book, which was also written, much of it in the 30s. The later and more esoteric objectives will emerge as the early ones are reached. So here are some of the objectives of the group work in the New Age. This is really what is to capture our attention. Group work in the New Age, and so many of us are involved in this in one way or another. Group unity. This must be achieved. Okay, so group unity. I've got a mouse here that just doesn't want to behave as it should, I think. Let's see. I don't know if I can make it a little better. It goes on and off and on and off. Time for new mouse, you know. So group unity is the first. Okay. This must be achieved through the practice of love, which is part of the practice of the presence of God, not all of it, because we do have to remember here that, you know, God is love, especially in our solar system, which is part of the practice of the presence of God through the subordination of the personality life to the group life and constant loving living service. The demand is high. Constant loving living service. Group unity. So this has to do with the group work of the New Age, the objectives of the group work of the New Age. Okay. Group unity. Through the practice of love, which is part of the practice of the presence of God, because God is love, through the subordination of the personality life, which can be done in love. This will be done if the love energy is sufficient, and constant loving living service. All right. Group unity, group meditation. These groups will eventually be grounded in the kingdom of souls. Grounded, think, you know, that sounds like that which is below, but they will be grounded or focused in the kingdom of souls, and the work done will be motivated and carried forward from the higher mental levels in the demonstration of the contemplative life. So a lot of the work done will be done by the group focused together on the higher mental plane. The group will be focused together on the higher mental plane. This involves the dual activity of the life of the disciple, wherein he functions consciously both as a personality and a soul. And, you know, it's not an either-or thing, and some of us reach a point where we say, well, oh, I'm too much the personality, I want to be the soul, but really it's both. It's at our stage and before the fourth degree, it's the soul-infused personality. And even then, you know, we don't really get rid of the mask. We have a personality either by will or because we make it as a Maya Varupa, or we become a triad, and that's the personality of our deeper identity, the monad. So we have a personality, we have a persona. Even the solar logos and the planetary logos have personalities. But they are in a special condition in relation to their inner and higher life, although they still have work to do. The life of the personality should be that of intelligent activity, and the life of the soul, that of the soul is loving contemplation. This is a really important sentence. So we can function actively in the world using the knowledge petals with intelligent activity, and there are knowledge petals in each one of the tiers too, and loving contemplation of reality, understanding something of the consciousness of God, and gradually understanding naught is but me. So it's a dual life of activity and consciousness, a dual life of activity and consciousness, a dual life of activity and consciousness. And we have to practice living this dual life. And it will take practice because it's training. It's the application of the seventh ray. Remember, this law is under the seventh ray, and therefore much training is required to adhere to this law. Many submissions, subserviences, laying our personality life at the feet of the soul, not making it a poor dead thing, but making it a useful instrument. Okay, the life of the personality should be that of intelligent activity. It's correlated generically with the third ray. That of the soul, whatever its ray may be, is that of loving contemplation, and again, contemplation in which one knows oneself to be one with all other souls. So when we say naught is but me, using a high form of the second ray, it is an act of contemplation. When we say naught is but me, naught is but me, well, that would be, I think I should have that one, don't you? All right, let's try that. We'll go up here to where this can be found, naught is but me, and we'll put it, naught is but me. All right. We'll add that. When we say that, naught is but me, we are in a state of contemplation. Because you can't say that as a personality. All right, so what do we have so far? Group unity, group meditation. The unity seems to correlate with the oneness of the first ray in a way, although unity is the second ray factor. We have group meditation. Well, is that correlating with the second ray or the first ray? Again, it could go either way. Group activity certainly with the third ray. Group activity, each group will have some distinguishing characteristic, and this will be dedicated to some specific form of service. Well, the 10 seed groups give us important forms of service. And for instance, in the Maury Federation University of the Seven Rays, we're working particularly with the fourth form of service, that of the educators of the New Age, and among us are the healers and psychologists and those who are interested in the New World religion, pretty much along the 246 line, even though the name is given, the name taken is that of a first-ray master who really is the strength behind all the esoteric schools, the head of all the esoteric schools, and if one day they will be federated, so the Moria Federation is kind of an anticipation of the true federation of esoteric schools, which will come when they've all emerged and realized their one source and the ray which they are expressing and can work cooperatively with all the others. Group unity, group meditation, group activity. There's a 1, 2, 3 there, but it could be a 2, 1, 3. So often, as a matter of fact, in our lodges and other activities, the 2 takes the preeminent position and the 1 follows in service, just as the 3 follows in service to the number 2. When the groups are properly established and the time is imminent, so here they're writing 80 years ago and the time is imminent, and after they have worked together subjectively for a certain necessary period of time, to be determined by the quality of the life of the individuals composing it and their selflessness and service. So the length of time depends upon the degree of development of the constituent members of the groups. Then they will begin to function outwardly, and their life aspect will begin to make its presence felt. Their life aspect, maybe the spirit aspect, maybe that which is behind the soul, or simply their vitality, that which is behind the soul, or on a lower level, their vital power will vitalize others. The various lines of activity will emerge when the group vibration is strong enough to make a definite impact on the consciousness of the race. The lines of activity Well, let's just say lines of activity will be partially determined, maybe very much determined. Lines of activity will be determined by the needs to be served, the needs of humanity, because each one of these groups meets a need, really. The various lines of activity will emerge when the group vibration is strong enough to make a definite impact upon the consciousness of the race. But first there must be the inner cultivation of the group, and when the note is sounding clearly, and let's call it the group note, is sounding clearly, and when there is sufficient strength, and when there is strength, understanding, harmony within the group, then it is fit to emerge. Yes, and so we have to remember that. Sometimes we create groups and suddenly they emerge. Well, the question is, have they been sufficiently cultivated for that? I'm thinking about our Moria Federation. Well, we certainly emerged in the public for the students. We've now completed 5 years for the students who could be attracted, but now with our new website, there's a greater, I think, public emergence. I think we are now fit with our 5-year and 2-year programs, a 7-year program, even an 8-year program with our new Meditation Quest program. Of course, maybe by the time you listen to this will be old hat, okay? But for the moment, that's the way it looks in the year 2014. Therefore, it will be apparent that the first and foremost requirement are group integrity and group cohesion. And there will be integrity when there is a purpose. There is a purpose, a group purpose. I want a group purpose to which all group members acquiesce. And group cohesion, loving cohesion, held together under the law of magnetic impulse, held together by true group love, not forced together. So both the Ray 1 and Ray 2 factors are here. Both Ray 1 and Ray 2 factors are present. Nothing can be accomplished without these. Well, then maybe they deserve to be enlarged in our consciousness. Group integrity and group cohesion. The law of cohesion is second law of the system. The law of, let's see, what, are those about the same? Yeah, they are. The law of vibration perhaps corresponds more with the group integrity. Well, it's of one thing. In other words, the absence of cleavages and the adherence to a single plan and vision, regardless of the many ways that the individuals may have of carrying out their part in this plan and vision. So nothing can be accomplished without these. And as you can understand, people may work in groups where group integrity and group cohesion are not fulfilled. They are not necessarily missing entirely, but they are not completely developed, and the power of the group will be limited for that reason. Nothing can be accomplished without group integrity and group cohesion, and we really have to put the group first, don't we? The subjective linking of each group member with each and the emergence of a group consciousness is a vital objective for the next few decades, and that would take us, I suppose, into the 1960s, 1970s, and of course that was the height, in a way, of the consciousness movement, but, well, there's still much to be done, much to be done. So we have to remember we are subjectively linked with all of our group members, and what we think of each other, the attitude with which we think of each other, is a very palpable esoteric factor in group life. It may seem so subtle as to be non-existent to those who are not esoterically inclined, but it's a real thing. And there will be no true group integrity or group cohesion unless the subjective factors are there. So let us say here, do not forget the subjective aspects of group integrity and group cohesion. It's not just an outward show, outward acts. It is how we really relate to each other subjectively, or let's say even in terms of our subtle bodies, how we relate to each other psychologically, to each other psychologically. That's very important, and that precedes true subjective relationship. Maybe if we could truly be souls in realization and expression, there would be no problem with subjective relationship, because the subjective relationship is relationship of the soul. But so often we are involved in psychological states which prevent true subjective relationship from actually occurring. Thus, there will emerge a group circulation or transmission of energy which will be of real value in world salvage. So the divine circulatory flow within each group will be accomplished, and the group will then definitely contribute to the elevation of humanity, or of the parts of humanity that the group contacts. For the individual, it should be remembered that purity of body, control of the emotions, the stability of the mind are fundamental requirements and should be the goal of daily practice. Well, you know, upon the path of probation they are, but even those upon the path of discipleship must not forget these and revisit them as lapses are possible. For the individual, it should be remembered that purity of body, control of the emotions, and stability of mind. The flitting monkey mind, you know, but the concentrated, well-directed mind capable of thinking sequentially and also with a degree of simultaneity, so that many factors can be grasped all at once. That's an intuitive grasp. These should be the goal of daily practice. Again and again, we must come back to these prime characteristics. Remember, he's writing this book as for initiates of the first degree. He somewhere says so. We must come back to these prime characteristics, and tiresome as the reiteration may be, I urge upon you the cultivation of these qualities. Well, again, when we're doing work in groups, it's seventh ray work in groups, and also the second ray, important, very important. And the seventh ray is the, let's call it, if I may, the ray of repetition. That's the only way to train the vehicle. And even when you're combing your hair, you know, you might just not work once. If you run the comb through your hair, you might have to run it through several times or brush your hair several times before you get it to lay down the way you want to. You know, just a very homely kind of example. You know, we can't have individuals in the groups that are sort of like wild hares. They just won't lay down. They will not subordinate themselves to the larger group requirement. Though these groups, or through the through these groups, it may be possible to restore some of the ancient mysteries. Some, not all, because they are timed, you know. They cannot be released. I mean, atomic energy has been released into humanity prematurely in a certain sense, and we have great trouble. And the ancient mysteries can be much more powerful than that. So restore some of the ancient mysteries, and some of the groups mentioned previously in Letters on Occult Meditation will be found among the emerging new groups. And we'll have to go back, we'll have to go into Letters on Occult Meditation and look at the groups in that. So look at the groups, GR groups in LOM, and also Dyna 1. And here I think maybe there'll be something spoken of, maybe in externalization of the hierarchy there'll be something there too. Here it doesn't seem to be dividing the groups into their specific parts, but I think it's a joyous thing to find your group and to find on the outer plane. More on the inner plane, it's a question of recognizing your group, really. I mean, in a way, you already are a member of that group. So, well, we'll get on to this new section, the characteristics of the new groups, and maybe I think we'll do that in a few moments. This it's rule number 9, really, for aspirants that tell us something about what has to be done. And let me let me go to that so we can all see it visually, and so I can remember it. The rays and initiations, let's say, maybe 21. Close. Let the disciple merge himself within the circle of the other selves, or almost his other selves. Let the disciple merge himself within the circle of the other selves. Let but one color blend them, and their unity appear. Only when the group is known and sensed can energy be wisely emanated. So it's possible to attempt to affiliate ourselves with the wrong group. I mean, our personality ray may seem to blend with the group soul ray, but once we're there longer, we have that deeper calling within our nature to find a group which expresses our soul ray. I remember I was a member of quite a few groups. Having the moon in Aquarius and lots of 11th house stuff, it tends to gravitate you that way. Masonic groups, that's true enough. Astrological groups and so forth. Psychological groups. I think I finally, found in the Theosophical teaching a true second ray teaching, though valuable for all soul ray types. With astrology groups, mostly their soul is on the third ray, and I liked very much what they were doing, but it did not appeal to me from my soul perspective. And maybe you have, they're interested in so many mundane things which are interesting in their own right, but didn't really call deeply to the idea of true spiritual development. So you look and you reject and look and reject, or they reject you, and eventually you find something that you really resonate to. Let one color blend them, the color of the soul ray largely, although there are other personality rays involved, but they are all subordinate to the major soul ray of the group. And when the right group is known and sensed, and you're blending yourself with it, and so are all the others, then energy can be wisely emanated, and not just emanated. It will be coherent, it will be along a certain ray line, it will be rightly directed, it will be serviceable, it will be useful. So let's all, many of us who are working with, if you're patient enough to go through the kind of talking about these things that I've been submitting you to, then, probably the DK teaching is very, very important to you, with the Theosophical teaching. And, you will be finding yourself in some manner on the second ray, whether from your soul perspective or your monadic perspective. And, in a sense, then you will have found your one color. But we have to go through in the earlier part of our life a lot of searching to find outwardly the groups with whom we can blend our energies in a wise and productive way, for the welfare of others. And many are the moments of, oh, it's not this, oh, it's not that, until finally we have that sense of resonance, right? So this is the end of Laws of the Soul, Webinar Commentaries number 23, Esoteric Psychology 2, and there will be a page number, I'm sure. Just has to be found. Oh, ho, ho, ho. Is it page 184? Well, I'm going to kind of pretend it's page. It's page 183. That's what it is. Right. And page 183 and beginning of Laws of the Soul, Webinar Commentary number 24, EP2, page 183. And we will go on to this new section, the characteristics of the new groups. So that will be hopefully sometime tonight here at the ranch. And it's a great book, isn't it? I mean, you know, so practical, giving us the sense of how we must be, how we must live as disciples in the world, and from the perspective of our psyche and the rays that condition them and the various laws to which we have to ascribe. We've been given the teaching, you know, a great teaching, and it's not the final teaching. No teaching is final. It's for our age and time, and very soon, in another 12 years, hopefully if we've assimilated properly, and that's one of the main purposes of this work, to help us all assimilate, take it into ourselves and make it a part of ourselves, not just swallow it whole so it's like some kind of chunk within it, but actually make it part of our energy system and consciousness. That's what we're trying to do. Okay, we'll go on then with number 24 shortly. See you soon. Bye-bye.